The Duke placed his wife's nursery key into his mother's hand, while Eleanor was still wearing the ribbon from which it had been cut. "Julian leaves with her tonight," Adrian said. "You will not approach him again." The severed blue ribbon hung from Eleanor's wrist, its frayed edge brushing the thin line of blood left by the Dowager Duchess's scissors. Around them, the long gallery had gone unnaturally still. Servants stood beneath the ancestral portraits, witnesses chosen not to defend her but to make her humiliation impossible to deny later. Eleanor looked past her husband toward their 6-year-old son. Julian stood beside his grandmother in a blue travelling coat she had never seen before. Its sleeves were too long, and one of its foreign silver buttons caught the firelight. "You ordered his departure before speaking to me," Eleanor said. "I ordered it after reading the physician's report." The folded report rested beneath Adrian's hand. It described Eleanor as fearful, irrational, and dangerously obsessed with imaginary foreign agents. The physician claimed her influence had filled Julian's mind with terrors. "You read that," she said, "but not the tutor's midnight entry records." "I read enough." 3 words, calmly delivered. Yet they struck harder than an accusation, shouted in anger. For 2 weeks, Eleanor had warned him that Julian's guards were being replaced without her consent. She had shown him foreign coins discovered beneath the child's bed and a nursery schedule written in a hand belonging to no servant in Blackthorne House. Adrian had promised to investigate after the parliamentary vote that might secure him a cabinet position. Instead, he had allowed his mother to summon a physician loyal to her family. Eleanor stepped toward Julian. The Dowager Duchess drew him behind her skirts. "You heard my son. He is still my child, and therefore must be protected from you." Julian's fingers tightened around a small wooden horse. Eleanor had carved it for him during the winter fever when he would sleep, only if she remained beside his bed. Now, he held it against his chest, as if it were the last familiar object in the room. Adrian avoided looking at it. Eleanor saw his jaw tense and recognized the moment when doubt might still have reached him. She reached inside her sleeve and withdrew a folded page. "This was found beneath Julian's pillow this morning. Ask Master Vale whether he wrote it." The Duke glanced at the paper, but did not take it. His mother did. She examined the rows of circles and short lines, then gave a dismissive laugh. "A child's scribbling." "It is not. Everything has become a secret message to you," Adrian said. "That is precisely why this must end." Eleanor held his gaze. You could question the tutor now. A muscle moved in his cheek. Behind him stood Lord Harcourt, the political patron whose support Adrian needed in Parliament. Harcourt's expression carried a silent warning. Scandal would cost the Duke his appointment. Adrian made his choice. "Take her to the West Apartments." 2 footmen approached, though neither met Eleanor's eyes. She did not resist them. A struggle would only make the physician's report appear true. Instead, she slipped the severed ribbon from her wrist and tied it around the wooden horse in Julian's hands. "Keep this," she whispered. "Whatever anyone tells you, I did not give you away." His lower lip trembled. The Dowager Duchess ordered him to say farewell. Julian looked directly at Eleanor and began reciting a nursery rhyme in Valerian. Several courtiers exchanged amused glances at the strange sounds. Adrian's face tightened with embarrassment, as though the boy's foreign words proved his wife's guilt. Eleanor did not move. Her father had used that same rhyme when she was a girl, concealing emergency coordinates inside diplomatic correspondence. The ordinary version described 5 birds flying home. Julian changed the number of birds, reversed 2 directions, and replaced the word forest with water. A private dock, a ship, tomorrow's dawn tide. Someone had taught her son how to describe the route along which he would be taken out of England. Then Julian added a sentence that was not part of the rhyme. "Grandmother says father will believe I died at sea." The wooden horse slipped from his fingers. No one laughed now. Across the gallery, the Dowager Duchess's smile vanished for less than a heartbeat. Then she seized Julian's shoulder. "You see what she has done?" she demanded. "She has filled the child with monstrous lies." "I never taught him that sentence," Eleanor said. Adrian stared at his son. Fear broke through his composure, but Lord Harcourt stepped close and murmured, "If this scene reaches Parliament, your appointment is finished." The Duke's eyes closed briefly. When they opened, he looked not at the unfamiliar coat or the silver buttons, but at Eleanor. "Remove her." The footman took her arms. As they pulled her toward the door, Julian kicked the wooden horse across the polished floor. It struck Eleanor's shoe and split along a hidden seam. A narrow brass token fell out. Eleanor bent, as if stumbling, and closed her fingers around it before anyone else saw. Stamped into the metal was the emblem of St. Orison's Refuge, an abandoned diplomatic safe house near the eastern docks. On its reverse side, someone had scratched 2 words. Other mother. Eleanor straightened and let the footman escort her away. The humiliation had never been merely about taking her child. Someone needed Adrian to declare her insane before Julian disappeared, and somewhere near the docks, another woman had already suffered the same fate. The West apartments had not been prepared for a duchess. Their fires were cold, the curtains smelled of dust, and the door had been fitted with a new lock on the outside. The footman released Eleanor only after the key turned behind them. She waited until their footsteps faded, then opened her hand. The brass token had left the emblem of St. Orison's Refuge pressed into her palm. Her father had taken her there once, when she was 12. He had been a royal diplomat then, carrying messages between governments that smiled at one another in public while threatening war in private. St. Orison's had served as neutral shelter for displaced wives and children connected to foreign missions. It had closed 15 years ago after one of its residents disappeared. Eleanor held the token near the window. Beneath the scratched words, "Other Mother," she noticed 3 shallow marks along the edge. They were not random damage. They formed an old diplomatic sign, meaning that the bearer was under observation. Someone had expected Julian to give her this token. A soft scrape came from the fireplace. Eleanor concealed the brass inside her sleeve, just before a soot-blackened hand emerged beneath the iron grate. A young maid pulled herself through an abandoned coal passage and rose coughing into the room. "Your Grace." "Nora?" The nursery maid's cap was missing, and a bruise darkened one cheek. She had served Julian since his birth, and had once remained awake for 3 nights, helping Eleanor keep him alive through scarlet fever. "The Dowager dismissed me this morning," Nora said. "She accused me of encouraging your fears." "Where is Julian?" "In the blue nursery. 2 guards are outside, and Master Vale has been ordered to remain with him until the carriage arrives." Eleanor crossed to her dressing table and found that its drawers had been emptied. Her money, correspondence, and outer garments were gone. Even the small portrait of Julian she kept beside her bed had been removed. "They intend to leave before midnight," she said. Nora stared at her. The Dowager told the Duke they would depart at dawn. Julian's rhyme identified tomorrow's dawn tide, not their departure. They need several hours to reach the eastern docks. Eleanor pulled a loose thread from the curtain and laid it across the mantle. Then she used pinpricks to divide it into measured sections, recreating the altered numbers and directions from Julian's rhyme. The route ended exactly where she feared, at the private key behind St. Orison's Refuge. Her father had taught her that a cipher was not merely a method of hiding words, it was a method of testing truth. False information often revealed the identity of the person who repeated it. "Nora, return through the passage. Tell the housekeeper that I discovered a ship called the Northern Star will collect Julian from the western dock. But that is not the true ship. No, which is why you must tell no one else." Understanding entered Nora's eyes. Whoever attempted to change the child's route after hearing the false information would expose themselves. The maid nodded, then hesitated. "There is something more. The Dowager brought a woman to the nursery 3 nights ago. She wore a veil and carried a silver-handled cane. I heard her crying behind the door." "The other mother?" "I think so. Master Vale called her Princess Katerina." Eleanor knew the name. Katerina of Valeria had lost her young son, Nikolai, during a palace uprising. Official reports claimed the boy had died, though his body had never been publicly identified. The princess had been living under British protection while rival factions fought over her country's throne. Julian resembled the missing prince. If conspirators presented him abroad as Nikolai, they could control a royal claimant too young to contradict them. If they later announced Julian's death at sea, Adrian would have no son left to demand home. Eleanor's knees weakened. She caught the bedpost before she fell. For one moment, she was not a diplomat's daughter solving a cipher. She was simply a mother locked away, while strangers dressed her child for disappearance. Nora moved toward her. "No," Eleanor forced herself upright. "Do not comfort me. Use the time." A key entered the outer lock. Nora vanished into the coal passage as the door opened. Adrian stepped inside alone. His expression hardened when he saw the marks Eleanor had drawn beside the thread. More codes? Our son named a dock and a tide in a language you believe I taught him. You did teach him, Valerian. I taught him greetings and songs. I did not teach him how to describe an escape route. Adrian closed the door. My mother says Julian invented the sentence about dying at sea because he heard you discussing abduction. Then ask him what the sentence means. He is 6. He is your son. That should make his words more important, not less. For an instant, shame crossed Adrian's face. Then he glanced toward the window, where Lord Harcourt's carriage waited below. My appointment will allow me to protect this family from enemies you do not understand. I understand them better than the man whose support you are purchasing with my sanity. His eyes flashed. Take care. No, Adrian. You take care. You may confine me, but I will not sign the statement your physician prepared. I will not admit to poisoning Julian's mind, and I will not surrender my legal claim to his care. Without her signature, the physician's opinion might justify temporary confinement within the household, but it could not easily become the uncontested record Adrian's political allies required. Eleanor had found the only boundary still available to her, and she would not yield it. A knock interrupted them. Lord Harcourt entered, without waiting for permission. He carried an opened letter and looked first at Eleanor, then at the thread on the mantel. The Eastern Harbour Master has reported an irregularity, he said. A foreign vessel requested permission to sail at dawn, under the name Northern Star. Eleanor's breath stopped. She had invented that name less than 10 minutes earlier. Only Nora had heard it. Yet the false ship was already written in an official harbour report dated that morning. The physician's accusation was not merely inconsistent with the evidence. Someone inside Blackthorne House had known exactly which lie Eleanor would use before she ever spoke it. Eleanor did not look at Nora's concealed passage. If the maid had betrayed her, the smallest movement toward the fireplace would expose them both. Instead, she held out her hand. May I see the harbour master's report? Lord Harcourt folded it once. A confined woman, accused of delusion, has no authority over port correspondence. But you brought it into my room. I brought it for Blackthorne. Adrian took the page from him. The message carried the harbour office seal and appeared to have been written shortly after 8 that morning. It named the Northern Star and requested the Duke's approval to search the vessel before departure. Eleanor read it upside down from where she stood. Her father had trained her to decipher dispatches while officials attempted to hide them beneath their hands. The date was convincing. The ink was not tan. A dark crescent remained wet beside the final line. Do not touch the lower corner, she warned Adrian. He paused. Harcourt's expression sharpened. Why? Because the report was written recently enough to stain his glove. Adrian pressed his thumb against the margin. Fresh black ink marked his skin. Silence filled the room. Lord Harcourt recovered first. The harbour clerk may have amended the report before sending it, without marking the amendment. Not every clerk follows your father's diplomatic rituals. This is not ritual, it is evidence. 2. Eleanor pointed to the wax. The harbour office used green wax for routine ship movements and red only when a vessel was suspected of smuggling weapons. Harcourt's letter carried red wax, but the message itself made no allegations serious enough to justify it. The seal was added to frighten Adrian, she said. The ship's name was inserted to frighten me. Adrian turned toward Harcourt. How did this name enter the letter? Harcourt's mouth tightened. Your wife has spent years studying government language. She chose a name commonly used by northern trading vessels. Coincidence is not conspiracy. It was an answer Adrian could accept without sacrificing his parliamentary future. Eleanor saw him do exactly that. He placed the forged report on the mantel. Until I speak with the harbour master, Julian remains under my mother's protection. You noticed the ink. I noticed an irregularity. You noticed a lie. His face hardened. And I will investigate it without turning this house into a theatre of accusation. You already turned it into one when you declared me insane before your servants. The words struck him, but Lord Harcourt stepped between them. The carriage must leave within the hour. Adrian looked at him. My mother said midnight. The roads are worsening. Delay would be unwise. There it was, the first operational change caused by Eleanor's resistance. Someone wanted Julian removed before the false report could be examined. Eleanor moved to the window and pulled the bell cord. Harcourt caught her wrist. "What are you doing?" "Summoning a servant." "You are confined. I am also the Duchess of Blackthorne, until my husband finds a law capable of erasing me." Adrian's gaze dropped to Harcourt's hand around her wrist. "Release her." Harcourt obeyed, though slowly. A maid entered moments later. Eleanor recognized her as one of the dowager's newly appointed servants. "Bring my son's travelling coat," Eleanor ordered. "If he is leaving in cold weather, I will inspect it." "The coat has already been approved," Harcourt said. "Then its inspection should trouble no one." Adrian nodded to the maid. She returned, carrying the small blue coat Julian had worn in the gallery. Eleanor spread it across the bed. The fabric was Valerian wool, expensive and difficult to obtain in England. Its silver buttons bore tiny birds with spread wings. The stitched name inside the collar had been removed, but the laundrywoman had marked the lining with a simple cross of yellow thread, so it could be returned to the correct household after washing. Eleanor had seen that mark before, on garments delivered to foreign families residing near St. Orison's refuge. She touched the lowest silver button. It was warmer than the others. Using a hairpin left beneath the dressing table, she loosened its back. A tightly rolled piece of paper rested inside the hollow metal. Harcourt lunged for it. Eleanor closed her fist first. Adrian blocked Harcourt's path. "Why are you attempting to seize evidence from my wife?" "For your son's safety." My son was wearing it. The contradiction stood naked between them. Harcourt had claimed Eleanor imagined a conspiracy, yet he was visibly afraid of what she had found. Eleanor unrolled the paper. It contained no names, only 4 times written beside 4 coloured symbols. Blue represented the nursery, black represented the servants' gate, white represented St. Orison's refuge. The final symbol was red. Beside it appeared the time of the dawn tide. Her father's old diplomatic code assigned red to a death, publicly witnessed but privately fabricated. "They intend to stage Julian's drowning," Eleanor said. Adrian read the symbols over her shoulder. "Or, you created this code yourself." She turned toward him in disbelief. "You were alone with the coat for less than a minute while both of you watched me." Harcourt seized the opportunity. She could have placed the message inside the button before the gallery confrontation. "I had never seen this coat." "So you claim." Adrian's eyes moved between them. He had witnessed Harcourt's fear. He had touched the fresh ink. He had seen the hidden paper emerge from Julian's button. Still, accepting the truth would mean admitting he had delivered his wife and son into the hands of those who had promised him power. "Julian will leave," he said at last, "but I will accompany the carriage." Harcourt went pale. It was a small victory, though not the one Eleanor needed. Adrian's presence might delay the conspirators, but it would not protect Julian if the Duke continued trusting the people arranging the journey. "Then let me speak to our son before you go." "No." The answer came from the doorway. The Dowager Duchess stood there with Julian beside her and Master Vale behind him. She had heard enough to know Eleanor was no longer merely enduring confinement. Her gaze settled on the opened button in Eleanor's hand. Then she smiled. "How fortunate you found that message," she said, "especially when the physician warned us that you had begun hiding papers in the child's clothes." Master Vale stepped forward, carrying a wooden box. Inside lay dozens of coded notes, all written in Eleanor's hand. The Dowager Duchess looked at Adrian. "Search her father's old desk," she ordered. "You will find the instrument she used to write every one of them." For the first time, Eleanor understood the true purpose of her confinement. The conspirators did not merely intend to remove Julian. They had spent months constructing evidence that his mother had planned the abduction herself. Adrian lifted one of the coded notes from the wooden box. The handwriting resembled Eleanor's so closely that even she felt a moment of disorientation. The sharp angle of the capital letters, the narrow spaces between words, and the small downward stroke beneath each number had all been copied from correspondence she had written years before. Master Vale placed the box on the table. "I found these beneath Lord Julian's mattress," he said. "Her Grace instructed the boy to burn them after memorizing the roots." Julian shook his head. "Mama never gave them to me." The tutor rested a hand on his shoulder. "You need not protect her any longer." Eleanor saw Julian wince. "Remove your hand from my son." Vale obeyed, but only after glancing at the Dowager Duchess for permission. Adrian spread the notes beside the message taken from the silver button. Their symbols appeared to match. "You said you had never seen this code," he told Eleanor. "I said I did not write the message in the button. These papers bear your hand. They bear its shape." The Dowager Duchess gave a weary sigh. Must every proof become another puzzle? Only when the proof is manufactured. Eleanor picked up the nearest note. "These words resemble mine, because someone copied them from letters kept in Adrian's correspondence cabinet." Harcourt folded his arms. "A convenient claim. Then ask the old housekeeper who removed those letters 3 nights ago." Every face turned toward the woman standing near the door. She tightened her grip on the cup in her hands. Lord Harcourt did. He said His Grace had authorized him to examine the Duchess's private correspondence. Adrian looked at Harcourt. "I gave you access to government letters, not my wife's." The distinction appeared unimportant at the time. It was important enough for someone to imitate her hand. Eleanor placed the forged note on the table. "You do not need a scholar to understand this, Adrian. Harcourt obtained my letters. Days later, copies appeared beneath Julian's mattress. The question is whether you will investigate or reward the man who planted them." The Duke hesitated. Eleanor knew exactly where those records were held. In a sealed cabinet at the Foreign Office. Adrian could request them before Parliament convened the next morning. The comparison would either support her claim or destroy it. Lord Harcourt moved to the fireplace and extended his hand. "Give me the notes. I will arrange a confidential examination." Eleanor stepped between him and the flames. "You will not take them. They concern state security. They concern my child." Harcourt reached past her. She swept the box from the table. Papers scattered across the floor, beyond his grasp and into the view of every servant gathered at the open doorway. It cost Eleanor the secrecy that might have protected her reputation, but it prevented Harcourt from destroying the evidence unseen. The Dowager Duchess's face hardened. "Look at her behavior, Adrian. Violent, defiant, incapable of reason." Eleanor knelt among the papers. "Ask why the person calling me irrational keeps trying to remove the evidence." A cry interrupted them. Julian had doubled over, one hand clutching his stomach. The wooden horse struck the floor as his knees gave way. Eleanor reached him before anyone else. His skin had turned damp and pale. A bitter, medicinal smell clung to his breath. She pressed 2 fingers beneath his jaw and felt his pulse racing. "What did he drink?" Master Vale backed toward the doorway. "Only warm milk." "When?" "Before we came here." Eleanor tore open Julian's coat and saw a blue stain near the pocket. Inside it, she found a small glass vial sealed with wax. Only a few drops remained. "The sleeping medicine," Julian whispered. Adrian's face drained of colour. Eleanor remembered her father's warning about embassy sedatives. Induce vomiting quickly, keep the patient awake, and never allow him to lie flat. She ordered a servant to bring salt water and another to fetch the household physician. No one moved. They looked toward the Dowager Duchess. "If you wait for her permission," Eleanor said, "the heir of Blackthorne may stop breathing." The old housekeeper broke from the doorway first. She had served Adrian since childhood and had watched Eleanor nurse Julian through every illness. Within moments, she returned with warm water and salt. Eleanor forced Julian to drink, then held him as his body rejected the medicine. He shook violently against her, but she kept speaking in the gentle Valerian phrases she had taught him as a toddler. "Stay with my voice. Count the windows. 1, 2, 3, 4, he gasped. "That is right." Again. The physician arrived and examined the remaining liquid. "Laudanum," he said. "Enough to keep a child unconscious for many hours." Master Vale pointed at Eleanor. She placed the vial in his coat. The accusation came too quickly. Adrian turned toward him. "You said she had not approached Julian since the gallery." Vale's mouth opened, then closed. The Dowager Duchess stepped forward. "Eleanor must have prepared the coat earlier. Fortunately, I ordered the boy brought here before the medicine could fully act." She transformed Eleanor's discovery into her own wisdom with a single sentence. But the old housekeeper was still holding the cup. She had seen who identified the poison, who knew how to respond, and who had delayed the servants with a glance. Eleanor met her eyes. The woman gave the smallest nod. Julian's pulse began to steady. Eleanor pressed her lips to his cold forehead, knowing that the moment he recovered, they would try to separate them again. Adrian crouched beside her. "What records exist for the medicine kept in this house?" The dispensary ledger, the physician replied. Every vial is numbered. The bottle in Eleanor's hand carried a scratched mark beneath the wax. 17. Then bring the ledger, Adrian ordered. It was removed this afternoon, the physician said. Your mother's secretary signed for it. Every face turned toward the Dowager Duchess. She did not deny it. The household books are under my authority now. Adrian looked at his mother, then at the coded papers across the floor. For the first time, suspicion outweighed embarrassment in his expression. Eleanor placed Julian's vial beside one of the forged notes. Send both to the Foreign Office, she said. Compare the handwriting with my sealed dispatches and ask whose signature authorized vial 17 to leave the dispensary. The Duke now possessed a direct path to the truth. He had only to decide whether his son's life mattered more than the political future Lord Harcourt had promised him. Adrian did not answer immediately. Julian lay against Eleanor's shoulder, exhausted but conscious. The discarded vial and forged notes rested within reach. All Adrian had to do was preserve them, delay the journey, and send an independent messenger to the Foreign Office. Lord Harcourt drew him aside. If these accusations become public tonight, the parliamentary committee will remove your name before morning. My son was drugged. By whom? Your wife controlled his nursery for 6 years. Her handwriting appears throughout the evidence, and she alone claims the symbols predict an abduction. The medicine ledger is missing. Then recover it quietly. You can protect Julian without allowing Eleanor's panic to destroy your future. Eleanor heard every word. Harcourt was no longer asking Adrian to choose between ambition and embarrassment. He was asking him to treat their son's poisoning as an inconvenience that could be investigated after power had been secured. Adrian looked toward Julian. The boy opened his eyes. I want Mama. The simplicity of the plea seemed to wound him more deeply than Eleanor's accusations had. He crossed the room and held out his arms. I will take him. Julian clung to Eleanor's dress. No. Adrian stopped. Julian, you did not believe me. The Duke's face tightened. The Dowager Duchess stepped forward, carrying a document bearing the physician's seal. This spectacle proves the child has been taught to reject his father. Sign the temporary guardianship order. I will take Julian to Ravenscourt, away from Eleanor and these servants, until his mind is restored. Eleanor recognized the trap at once. Ravenscourt lay west of London. St. Orison's Refuge and the eastern docks lay in the opposite direction. A public departure toward the Dowager's estate would provide the perfect alibi, while another carriage carried Julian east. Do not sign it, she said. Adrian read the first page. The order permits your mother to select his guards, control his correspondence, and move him without informing either parent, Eleanor continued. It also gives her possession of every object taken from the nursery, including the notes, the vial, and the coat. I will accompany him. The order does not require her to allow you. His eyes moved to the final clause. She knew he had seen it. For one suspended moment, the room contained every opportunity he would later claim had been denied to him. The fresh ink on Harcourt's report, the hidden message, the laudanum in Julian's pocket, Vale's contradiction, the missing dispensary ledger, his mother's sudden demand for complete authority. Eleanor lowered her voice. If you believe nothing else I have said, believe what you witnessed with your own eyes. Harcourt placed a pen beside the document. The committee meets in 11 hours. Adrian signed. The scratch of the nib sounded louder than Julian's frightened breathing. The Dowager Duchess pressed her seal beneath his name. Her composure did not change, but satisfaction appeared briefly in her eyes. Take the child, she ordered. 2 guards entered. Eleanor rose with Julian in her arms. If you touch him while he is still weak, I will make certain every servant in this house describes it before a magistrate. The guards hesitated. Eleanor, Adrian warned. No, you have surrendered the right to ask for my obedience where our son is concerned. She looked toward the old housekeeper. Bring blankets. Julian must not be moved until the physician confirms he can travel. The physician examined the boy again. Under the gaze of half the household, he could not honestly approve an immediate journey. He should remain quiet for at least 2 hours. The Dowager Duchess's jaw tightened. 1 hour. 2, Eleanor said. Adrian surprised everyone by supporting her. 2 hours. It was not courage. It was the smallest concession he could make without confronting what he had done. Yet Eleanor accepted the time. because Julian needed every minute of it. The dowager ordered Vale and Harcourt from the room. She took the wooden box, the blue coat, and the forged notes with her. When Eleanor reached for the vial, Adrian stopped her. "I will keep this. You just transferred control of every piece of evidence to your mother. I am still Duke of Blackthorne. You signed a document allowing her to act without your permission. She would never harm Julian." Eleanor stared at him. "She permitted a drugged child to be placed in that coat. You cannot prove she knew, and you have decided that what I cannot yet prove is more important than what you refuse to see." Adrian wrapped the vial in his handkerchief and slipped it inside his coat. "I will deliver it to the Foreign Office myself. You have a parliamentary committee at dawn. I can do both." "No, Adrian. Harcourt designed the hours so that you must choose." He flinched, but pride closed his expression again. "I will not be instructed by a woman who has spent months deceiving me." The words severed the last fragile hope Eleanor had carried into the room. She no longer intended to save their marriage or persuade him to trust her. Her goal narrowed to 2 lives, Julian's and that of the unknown woman held near St. Orason's refuge. "If Julian disappears," she said, "I will not allow you to call it an accident." Adrian left without answering. The old housekeeper helped Eleanor carry Julian to the bed. As the door closed, Nora crawled from the coal passage, trembling. "They searched the housekeeper's room," she whispered. "They found the message about the Northern Star and dismissed her." Eleanor looked toward the older woman. She had lost her position because she had chosen to help a child, while others waited for permission. "I am sorry." The housekeeper straightened. "I served this family before Lord Adrian could walk. I will not serve the people who taught him to abandon his son." Outside, carriage wheels rolled across the courtyard. Too early. Eleanor went to the window. The dowager's large travelling carriage stood beneath the lamps, prepared for everyone to see. But behind the stable wall, almost hidden by darkness, a smaller black carriage moved toward the servants' gate. A child-sized figure lay beneath a blanket inside it. Eleanor turned toward the bed. The blankets were raised in the shape of Julian's body. She pulled them back. The mattress was empty. In the confusion surrounding Adrian's signature, someone had already taken her son through the coal passage. Then, from deep beneath Blackthorne House, Julian's wooden horse struck the iron pipes, 3 times the signal Eleanor had taught him to use whenever he was lost and could not call her name. Eleanor dropped to her knees beside the iron pipes. 3 knocks came again, weaker than before. "He is still beneath the house," she said. "The figure in the carriage is a decoy." Nora opened the fireplace grate and crawled into the coal passage. Eleanor followed, without waiting for permission, tearing the sleeve of her gown against the brickwork. The old housekeeper seized a lamp and entered behind them. The passage descended steeply. Soot coated Eleanor's palms, and the air grew colder with each turn. Somewhere ahead, a door slammed. "Julian!" she called. No answer came, only the fading rattle of wheels from the courtyard above. At the first junction, Eleanor stopped. 3 tunnels branched beneath the house. The left led toward the kitchens. The centre rose behind the old chapel. The right continued beneath the stables. A strip of blue ribbon had been tied around a rusted pipe on the right. Julian had remembered. Eleanor pulled it free. It was the same ribbon she had tied around his wooden horse. He had left her a trail, with the only thing she had been permitted to give him. They followed the passage toward the stables. Behind them, men entered the tunnel. "Her Grace is to be returned to confinement," a guard shouted. The dowager had already discovered their escape. Eleanor reached a narrow iron door. The brass token from the wooden horse fit its lock, though the key resisted after years without use. She turned it with both hands until the mechanism gave way. The door opened into an underground carriage bay hidden beneath the eastern wing. Julian lay on a bench with his wrists bound. Master Vale stood over him, attempting to pour medicine between his lips. Eleanor struck the vial from the tutor's hand. It shattered against the stone floor. Vale seized Julian and pressed a knife beneath the child's chin. 1 step closer, and he bleeds. Nora covered her mouth. Eleanor forced herself to stop. "You cannot carry him through the streets while he is screaming. He will not scream for long. You need him alive and recognizable when you reach Valeria. A scar across his throat would make your prince difficult to display." Vale's eyes changed. She had named the scheme aloud, and his reaction confirmed it. "You were never merely his tutor," she continued. You taught him the phrases he would be required to speak after the crossing. You hid the codes, prepared the coat, and made him answer to Nikolai. I taught him a future greater than the one his weak father could offer. Julian stared at Eleanor. His face was grey from the laudanum, but his right hand moved slowly toward the wooden horse beside him. Eleanor spoke in Valerian. The fifth bird flies home. Vale glanced toward the tunnel, trying to interpret the sentence. Julian understood. He threw the horse against a hanging stable lantern. The lamp fell. Oil spread across the floor, and flame rose between Vale and the hidden exit. Eleanor lunged through the smoke. The knife cut across her forearm, but she caught Julian before he struck the stones. Nora dragged the boy away, while the old housekeeper slammed the iron door against the advancing guards. Vale escaped through a second passage leading beneath the outer wall. "Let him go," Eleanor said. "Save Julian." Smoke filled the chamber. The fire had reached stacked carriage blankets, blocking the route back to the house. Eleanor wrapped Julian in her overskirt and followed Nora through Vale's exit. They emerged behind the stable wall as bells began ringing above Blackthorne House. Adrian ran across the courtyard. He stopped when he saw Eleanor's bleeding arm and Julian in Nora's grasp. "What happened?" "Your son's tutor held a knife to his throat." Adrian reached for Julian. The Dowager Duchess appeared between them, accompanied by 2 officers from the parish watch. "My son," she said, "the guardianship order gives me lawful control of the child. Eleanor has attacked his tutor, set fire to your house, and attempted to remove Julian in defiance of your command." "That is a lie," Nora cried. One officer looked toward the smoke rising from the eastern wing. "Who started the fire?" "Julian knocked over a lamp to escape Vale," Eleanor answered. "A 6-year-old child drugged with laudanum?" the Dowager asked. "Or did his mother instruct him to do it?" Adrian looked at the burning wing, then at the document his mother held. "Where is Vale?" he demanded. "Fleeing toward St. Orison's," Eleanor said. "Send riders to the eastern docks." The Dowager raised the guardianship order. "Those officers answer to the lawful custodian. I order them to arrest Eleanor and recover the child." Adrian stepped forward. "I am Duke of Blackthorne. You will obey me." The older officer's expression tightened. "Your Grace, this bears your signature and seal. It grants the Dowager Duchess sole authority over Lord Julian's movement and protection until the physician withdraws his report. I withdraw my consent. You may contest the order before a magistrate. Until then, we must honour it." Adrian stared at the paper, as though seeing his signature for the first time. His rank could not easily undo the authority he had deliberately surrendered. His order had armed the person Eleanor feared and stripped him of the immediate power to protect his own child. The Dowager reached for Julian. He recoiled. "Do not let her take me." Eleanor moved between them despite the blood running from her wrist. "If they arrest me, Nora takes Julian to the old housekeeper's sister. If they arrest Nora, the housekeeper takes him. You will have to imprison every woman who chooses his life over your document." The servants had begun gathering in the courtyard. They had watched Eleanor enter a burning tunnel and return carrying the heir while Vale disappeared. The officers hesitated. Then a messenger galloped through the front gates, waving a sealed dispatch. "Urgent message for the Duke." Adrian tore it open. The Foreign Office had received evidence that confidential parliamentary routes had been copied from documents stored inside Blackthorne House. Until an inquiry could determine Adrian's involvement, his cabinet appointment had been withdrawn. Harcourt's promised future was gone. The betrayal that had cost Eleanor her freedom had not even purchased the power Adrian wanted. A second line changed his expression from shock to terror. "What is it?" Eleanor asked. He handed her the dispatch. A royal patrol had found a woman wandering near the eastern docks in a torn mourning dress. She identified herself as Princess Katerina and claimed her son was alive. Before collapsing, she had repeated one warning. The boy from Blackthorne must reach St. Orison's before dawn, or they will kill both children and blame their mothers. The harbour clock struck 11. The tide would turn in 7 hours. Eleanor read the warning a second time. The English translation appeared straightforward, but the Valerian sentence written beneath it was not. The phrase translated as "must reach St. Orison's" used the formal construction reserved for the delivery of property, never the rescue of a person. Princess Katerina had not asked them to bring Julian to the refuge. Someone had forced her to summon him there. "This is bait," Eleanor said. They need Julian at St. Orison's before dawn. Adrian looked toward the black carriage. Then we take him somewhere they cannot reach. Your mother's order follows him wherever we go. The captain of the Royal Patrol stepped through the gate. He had accompanied the messenger and wore the insignia of the crown rather than the parish watch. A child, named in a possible foreign conspiracy, may be placed temporarily under royal protection, he said. But the Duke and Duchess must both consent. Eleanor looked at Adrian. Not your mother, not Harcourt. You and I. I consent. It was the first decision he had made that night, without looking towards someone else for approval. The Dowager Duchess objected, but the patrol captain overruled her. Julian was carried to a guarded royal infirmary adjoining the Foreign Office. Nora and the old housekeeper went with him, while Eleanor permitted no servant chosen by the Dowager to enter his room. The infirmary became her first ground outside Adrian's control. A surgeon cleaned the cut on her arm. Eleanor refused laudanum and allowed only a tight bandage. She needed her mind clear. Princess Katerina lay in the next chamber, weak from hunger and exposure. When Eleanor entered, the princess seized her hand and spoke rapidly in Valerian. "My son is alive." I heard him beneath the refuge. "Nikolai?" Katerina nodded. "Harcourt said he would return my child if I wrote the warning, but the tutor changed my words after I signed them." Adrian stood behind Eleanor. "Harcourt?" The princess recoiled at the sound of his voice. "He wore your seal." Adrian removed his signet ring. "This seal?" "No, the large one from your correspondence cabinet. He said you had granted him authority over every foreign matter in your house." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. For 6 years, she had managed Blackthorne's diplomatic invitations, translated foreign letters, and prevented ambitious visitors from reaching Adrian without scrutiny. When he stripped her of authority and allowed Harcourt to control the correspondence cabinet, he had given the conspirators access to his ducal seal and his private routes into government. "I thought Harcourt was helping me secure the appointment," Adrian said. "He was using your name to move prisoners through royal checkpoints," Eleanor replied. Katerina reached beneath her pillow and withdrew a torn strip of blue wool. "I pulled this from the tutor's sleeve when I escaped." Katerina reached beneath her pillow and withdrew a folded order. "I took this from Vale when I escaped." The paper authorized Julian's removal from Blackthorne House under Adrian's stolen ducal seal. Beneath it appeared a second impression, a crescent beneath a hawk. Eleanor had seen that mark only once before, on the Dowager Duchess's private correspondence. "This is her seal," Eleanor said. Adrian stared at the page. "My mother never permits anyone else to carry it." Then she either signed this order herself, or she gave Harcourt the one object capable of proving her involvement. The patrol captain sealed the document inside an evidence envelope. Eleanor, Katerina, Adrian, and the physician signed across the wax. For the first time, they possessed proof that required no code, foreign language, or expert explanation. The woman who had taken Eleanor's nursery key had also authorized the removal of her son. Eleanor turned to the patrol captain. "Ask the dowager which bird was sewn onto Julian's coat." The older woman smiled. "Any servant could answer that." "Then do not ask her yet." Eleanor looked toward the foreign couriers, the sealed evidence envelope in the captain's hand, and the 2 children's clothing prepared by the same laundry. "Bring everyone to the Foreign Office inquiry at sunrise. Bring Princess Katerina, the physician, the old housekeeper, Nora, and every servant who saw the blue coat." Harcourt laughed. "You are under arrest." "Yes," Eleanor said, "which means you believe I can no longer alter the evidence." She faced the dowager. "At sunrise, I will ask one question about those buttons. You will answer because you think you already know what it proves." Eleanor allowed the officers to take her away. She no longer needed the burned ledger or a confession. She needed the conspirators to tell one verifiable lie in front of witnesses, and the wrong-facing bird would make it impossible for them to agree. Sunrise entered the Foreign Office inquiry chamber through tall eastern windows, turning the long table pale gold. Eleanor stood beneath guard at one end. Her wrists were no longer bound, but the arrest order remained active. Across from her sat the Dowager Duchess, Lord Harcourt, and Master Vale. Royal officers had recovered Vale while searching the tunnels beneath St. Orison's, though the laundrywoman was still missing. Princess Katerina sat beside the patrol captain. Julian remained in the guarded infirmary with Nora and the old housekeeper. Prince Nikolai had been moved to a separate room under the protection of his mother's embassy. Eleanor had insisted upon those separations. No child would be displayed as evidence. No witness would be left alone with a Blackthorne servant. No document would pass between hands without its transfer being recorded. The senior minister opened the inquiry by placing 3 objects on the table: Eleanor's severed nursery key, the empty bottle marked 17, the sealed removal order recovered by Princess Katerina. Lord Harcourt rose first. The Duchess frightened her son with stories of spies, planted the medicine herself, and invented this conspiracy after her husband removed the child from her control. His argument was simple enough to sound believable. Eleanor did not answer immediately. Instead, she turned toward Master Vale. "You testify that I placed the medicine in Julian's coat. When did you see me touch it?" Vale hesitated. "Before the gallery confrontation." "Who possessed the coat then?" "I did." A murmur passed through the chamber. Eleanor looked toward the physician. "Who collected bottle 17 from the dispensary?" The physician produced the retained receipt. "The Dowager Duchess's secretary." The Dowager remained seated. "It was intended for my sleeplessness." "The prepared dose was measured for a child," the physician replied. Harcourt stepped forward. "A receipt proves only that medicine entered her household." "No," Eleanor said, "but the removal order proves what the medicine was meant to enable." The patrol captain opened the evidence envelope and displayed the document Katerina had taken from Vale. It instructed Blackthorne's guards to move Julian while unconscious and to report that Eleanor had fled with him. The minister examined the 2 seals. Adrian rose. "The upper impression is mine. Harcourt used it after I gave him access to my correspondence cabinet." "And the lower impression?" the minister asked. Adrian looked at his mother. "It is hers." The Dowager Duchess stood. "My seal was stolen." "From where?" Eleanor asked. "My private chamber." "When did you discover it missing?" The Dowager opened her mouth, then stopped. She could not provide a date without exposing the lie. If the seal had disappeared before Julian's removal, she should have reported it. If it disappeared afterward, it could not have been used on the order. Eleanor placed the nursery key beside the document. "You took this key from my wrist before witnesses. You assumed control of Julian's guards. Your secretary collected the drug prepared for him, and your private seal authorized his removal." She faced the ministers. "No cipher is required. No foreign expert is required. Every step followed the authority Adrian gave his mother after he declared me unfit." The old housekeeper rose from the witnesses' bench. "I saw Her Grace prevent the servants from helping when Lord Julian collapsed. I saw the Duchess identify the poison and keep the boy awake. Then I saw the Dowager order the evidence removed." Nora stood beside her. "And I saw Master Vale carry Julian into the underground passage." Vale's courage broke first. "She promised the boy would never be harmed," he said, pointing toward the Dowager. "She said he would be taken abroad until the Duke's appointment was secure." Harcourt seized his shoulder. Silence. Royal officers pulled them apart. The Dowager looked at Adrian. "Everything I did was for your future." Adrian's answer came without hesitation. "You nearly buried my son beneath it." The minister ordered Harcourt, Vale, the physician's accomplices, and the Dowager Duchess detained. Eleanor's arrest order was torn in half. Her name, however, was not restored by that gesture alone. She looked at Adrian. "You condemned me publicly." He understood. Before the ministers, officers, servants, and foreign representatives, Adrian stepped into the center of the chamber. "My wife warned me. I saw contradictions, and I refused to investigate them because I wanted political power. Harcourt deceived me, but my betrayal was my own choice." He removed his parliamentary sash and placed it beside the severed nursery key. "I withdraw every accusation against Eleanor. I surrender my cabinet appointment, and I accept responsibility for giving these people the authority they used against her." Only then did Eleanor feel the room change. She was no longer a wife, waiting for her husband to believe her. She was the woman whose truth had forced a duke to surrender the future for which he had betrayed his family. Adrian bent over the document. "The lower mark belongs to my mother," he said. The Dowager Duchess rose so quickly that her chair struck the floor. "That is absurd." Adrian did not look at her. "It is the widow's seal, created after my father's death. The crescent beneath the hawk was cut for her alone." The minister read the hidden instructions aloud. The right-facing bird identified the substitute child to be displayed before the Valerian couriers. The left-facing bird marked Prince Nikolai for secret removal. After the ship cleared British waters, Julian was to be dressed in the prince's clothes and killed in a staged attack. Nikolai would disappear separately, leaving no living child capable of exposing the exchange. At the bottom appeared Harcourt's initials, Adrian's stolen ducal seal, and the dowager's private mark. Dismissal passed across the room first, then doubt, then a deep silence as each earlier contradiction found its place. Harcourt recovered before anyone else. A stolen seal proves nothing. Eleanor had access to Blackthorne House. Not to my mother's seal, Adrian said. She kept it on a chain beneath her gown. Every eye turned toward the dowager's throat. The chain was there. The seal was not. The patrol captain searched the wooden box containing the forged notes. Beneath its false bottom, he found the missing widow's seal, wrapped in a dispensary receipt for vial 17. The dowager stared at Vale. You fool. It was not a confession, but it revealed whom she blamed for failing to conceal it. Vale stepped away from her. She ordered everything. Harcourt seized him by the coat. Be silent. Royal officers separated them. Under questioning, the full scheme emerged, not from a sudden admission, but from evidence each conspirator could no longer explain away. Harcourt had learned that a Valerian faction would pay heavily for Prince Nikolai's return. He also knew that the prince's death during an alleged English attack could ignite a conflict from which his shipping investments would profit. The dowager wanted Adrian elevated to the cabinet and Eleanor removed from the family. For years, she had resented a diplomat's daughter who controlled foreign access to Blackthorne House and whose influence over Julian limited her own authority. Together, they opened St. Orison's refuge, imprisoned Katerina and Nikolai, and hired Vale to prepare Julian as a substitute. The physician's false diagnosis transformed Eleanor's warnings into symptoms of madness. The forged notes made her appear to be the architect of the abduction. Adrian's guardianship order gave the dowager lawful-looking control over Julian's clothes, guards, medicine, and movements. None of it could have proceeded so quickly without Adrian's choice. He had seen the wet ink on Harcourt's report. He had heard Vale contradict himself. He had watched Eleanor save Julian from laudanum. Yet he signed because the parliamentary committee met in 11 hours. The minister ordered Eleanor's arrest record struck immediately. Lord Harcourt was detained on charges of kidnapping, forgery, misuse of a noble seal, conspiracy against the crown, and attempting to provoke armed conflict. His shipping accounts and correspondence were seized. Master Vale was charged with kidnapping, administering poison, assault, and conspiracy. His testimony could reduce neither the danger in which he had placed the children nor the knife he had held against Julian's throat. The physician lost his royal license and was taken into custody with the dowager's secretary. The dowager duchess was placed under guarded confinement pending trial. Her household authority, access to Julian, and control over Blackthorne property were revoked. As officers approached her, she looked at Adrian. You would permit strangers to take your own mother? He faced her without anger. I permitted you to take my wife and son while calling it protection. I will not repeat the same cowardice by calling this loyalty. She was escorted from the chamber. The public record was corrected before the ministers, foreign representatives, servants, and members of the parish watch who had witnessed Eleanor's arrest. The physician's declaration of insanity was formally withdrawn. The guardianship order was invalidated, and Eleanor's authority over Julian was restored. Princess Katerina entered with Nikolai's hand in hers. The boy wore an ordinary wool coat without silver birds. She stopped before Eleanor. You saved the child of a woman you had never met. Eleanor looked toward the infirmary doors, where Julian waited with Nora. I knew what it was to have men turn a mother's terror into evidence against her. Katerina embraced her. When the chamber had emptied, Adrian remained beside the table. His political seat was gone. The Foreign Office inquiry would continue examining every document issued under his seal, and he had agreed to surrender control of Blackthorne's foreign correspondence permanently. He placed a signed settlement before Eleanor. Her dowry would be transferred into an independent trust. The West Estate would become her separate residence, with income sufficient for her household and Julian's care. Nora and the old housekeeper would receive pensions and positions protected from dismissal by the Duke. St. Orison's refuge would be restored with Blackthorne money and governed by Eleanor, Katerina, and an independent board. It would shelter women and children, threatened by political coercion. "These are not gifts," Adrian said. "They are restitution." Eleanor read every page. "You will correct the record at Blackthorne House as publicly as you condemned me." "Yes." "You will say that I warned you before you signed." "Yes." "You will not ask Julian to hide what happened in order to protect your name." His voice roughened. "No." "And you will not use this settlement to purchase my return." "No." For the first time since the gallery, Adrian met her eyes, without demanding that she make his guilt easier to bear. "I loved my ambition more than I trusted your judgment," he said. "I called your knowledge madness because believing you would have required me to surrender something I wanted. Harcourt deceived me, but I chose to become useful to him." Eleanor felt the truth of his remorse. She also felt the wound his remorse could not erase. "I am taking Julian to the West Estate." Adrian closed his eyes, then nodded. "I will not oppose you. You may write to him. Whether he sees you will depend upon his wishes and your conduct. And you? I will judge the man you become after there is no office left to win and no audience left to impress." It was not forgiveness, but neither was it a locked door. 1 year later, the long gallery at Blackthorne House filled with the same servants who had witnessed Eleanor's humiliation. Adrian stood beneath the ancestral portraits without his parliamentary sash. He had spent the year repairing St. Orison's refuge, restoring Eleanor's property, dismissing every official connected to the false accusation, and submitting his conduct to public inquiry. He had visited Julian every Sunday. At first, he was permitted 1 hour, then an afternoon. Eventually, Julian began waiting beside the window for his carriage. Adrian never asked Eleanor to shorten the distance between them. He wrote to her, answered every question honestly, and accepted each boundary without complaint. That morning, he addressed the household. "I declared my wife unfit because trusting her would have cost me something I wanted. I gave authority to those who harmed her, and I refused to listen when our son's life depended upon it. No deception committed against me excuses the betrayal I chose against her." When he finished, he stepped down from the place where he had once taken Eleanor's nursery key. Julian entered first, carrying the repaired wooden horse. Around its neck was the blue ribbon, carefully stitched where the dowager's scissors had cut it. Eleanor followed. Adrian's breath caught when he saw the small trunk carried behind her. He did not approach. "Are you staying?" he asked. "I am not returning to the marriage we had." Hope disappeared from his face, but he nodded. Eleanor continued. "That marriage required me to endure your distrust quietly. If I remain now, it will be because we are building something different." Adrian looked at the trunk again. "What would you require of me?" "The truth, even when it costs you, respect before obedience, and the understanding that loving us does not give you the right to control us." "You have my word." "I had your word before." Pain crossed his face. "Then I will spend the rest of my life proving that this one is different." Julian walked between them and placed the wooden horse in Adrian's hands. "Mama says you can come home with us." Adrian looked at Eleanor, unable to trust what he had heard. She stepped closer. "I have forgiven you," she said, "not because you suffered and not because you apologized. I forgive you because for 1 year, when no title or reward remained, you continued repairing what you broke." His eyes filled. "I do not deserve you. This is not about what you deserve. It is about what I freely choose." Eleanor took the nursery key from her pocket. It was the same key once cut from her wrist and placed in another woman's hand. She laid it in Adrian's palm, then closed his fingers around it. "This key does not mean the room belongs to you. I know. It means I trust you to enter without taking anything from me." Adrian lowered his forehead to her hand. "I will never mistake love for possession again." Eleanor touched his face. When he rose, she embraced him. For several seconds, neither spoke. Julian wrapped his arms around them both, pressing the wooden horse between their bodies, while the servants quietly turned away to hide their tears. Adrian kissed Eleanor's forehead. "Welcome home." She looked around the gallery where she had once stood bleeding beneath a severed ribbon. "No," she said gently. "Welcome back to our family." Then Eleanor took the key from his hand, opened the gallery door herself, and led her husband and son through it together.